Not Inoue. A lot of people have Inoue up there.
I just think with Inoue, he kind of he had that one fight with Cool Boy Steph,
Mm-hmm.
and he did good that fight. He looked good, but then after that fight, I just felt like they crucified me for like fighting no name fighters and people that people don't know. I felt like he kind of done the same thing. So
Welcome back, boxing fans, to another great show with Sean on Boxing. So, why is it that some fighters consistently need to crap on other fighters to build up their name? Whether it's guys like David Benavidez using Canelo Alvarez to build up his name, or guys like Shakur Stevenson or others. Shakur's done it multiple times. We saw him crapping all over Lomachenko, talking about how Lomachenko is praised while he gets criticized, yet they're both boxers. But for a guy as smart as Shakur, who is a professional fighter, you think he would see the obvious differences between his style and Lomachenko's style. Lomachenko is a front first aggressive boxer. Shakur is a defense first counterpuncher. These two styles are very different. You can't tell me a Lomachenko fight that was boring, but I can tell you several fights that Shakur Stevenson was in that are boring. And I don't say this to hate on him. It's just people that understand boxing understand that certain styles inevitably can become boring depending on who the opponent is, right? And then there's styles where you can't imagine a boring fight because stylistically guys just don't have that kind of style of boxing. Even look at Inoue, for example, when he had to become undisputed against the UK fighter, a guy that was a two-time champion, but obviously was a tall, long fighter who liked to control distance behind a jab and move. Obviously, when you're fighting a guy like Inoue, who's an aggressive power puncher, a boxer puncher, you're going to try to control distance, control the fighter with your feet and your jab. He did that for multiple rounds. Yet even though Inoue spent the whole fight chasing after that guy, it still wasn't a boring fight. Was it Inoue's most exciting fight? Of course not. But it wasn't a boring fight because Inoue consistently put pressure, was very successful out jabbing the jabber, the boxer, and continued to break him down to eventually stopping him late in that fight to become the undisputed champion. The irony is, Shakur just came out recently in an interview, right, trying to build himself up, trying to hype up his product, but yet doing that at the expense of another fighter, right? And that's what I don't understand. You figure real respect real. And in all sports, that's a similar situation. It's the same thing as you had that track and field athlete, the American guy, who was shitting all over the NBA, all to try to highlight himself. Yet him trying to use the NBA to build up himself as a track athlete doesn't make any sense at all. Because we've had track athletes that were superstars, bigger and more popular than 90% of the NBA players. Carl Lewis back in the day was a superstar, a megastar. There was of course a few NBA players that were bigger and more well known than him, but only a few, right? When we talk about baseball players and football players, he was bigger than the majority of them. We just had one of the best, if not the best, track and field athletes ever in Bolt from Jamaica, a Jamaican. I don't even know how much I've ever heard Bolt even talk in an interview, yet he's a superstar, right? He did not need to crap on other athletes to build himself up. He let his outgoing personality that just was vibrant on the camera, his stellar performances, that just blew people away. That did the talking for him. For a guy like Shakur, who loves to talk, right? And we'll talk about how he's going to destroy someone and talk about how, he's this and that, and really kind of build himself up to be a Mike Tyson-esque type of fighter. But yet then go out there and put on what could only be described as a boring, disappointing performance. Right? And he's done that numerous times. And this isn't fans or media or people hating on him. This is people being disappointed. Him building himself up in interviews, talking up his his skill set and his potential ability, getting fans hyped up to what he's potentially going to do in the ring, only to go in there and disappoint and basically do the complete opposite of what he was talking about, right? He's the one that has let himself down, right? Obviously, as a real boxing fan, we can look at the fighters that have ducked him and don't want to fight him. And potentially, if he would have got some of those fighters, that would have helped elevate him, even though maybe his style is not the most exciting. Right? That's true too. But we always know when somebody is very dangerous that people are not eager to jump in the ring with him. We've seen this on many, many occasions. Right? And obviously with Shakur, it's no different. But in this interview, this just recently, that he's obviously hyping up the fight with him as Zepeda. Like, you're fighting Zepeda, an aggressive, come-forward Mexican fighter. Like, everything is on the table for you to let your fighting do the talking, to go in there and impress against an aggressive, come-forward fighter. The kind of fighters that Floyd Mayweather used to put out stellar performances in his career, knowing that stylistically they were the perfect style for the way he fought, right? Because they brought the work to him, which allowed him to do what he wanted to do. That's why primarily at 147 pounds, that's primarily all the fighters he ever fought, because he knew stylistically it would work out perfectly for his style. So Shakur has this kind of opportunity ahead of him, but yet he'd rather downplay and diminish one of the top fighters in boxing in Inoue, right? Talking about how, after Stephen Fulton, he could understand people having Inoue at pound for pound number 3. But since then, he hasn't really done anything impressive. And because people are so critical of Shakur because of his resume, he feels that he should be the same way with Inoue. So, because people are critical of you, not so much because of your resume. People knew you were going to fight Floyd Schofield. People blame Schofield for pulling out of that fight. They don't blame you for the most part, unless they're real haters, primarily probably Tank Davis fans. But for the most part, people understood the circumstance. It's not your fault Schofield pulled out. It's not your fault that Tank Davis don't look like he's interested in taking on really the legacy fight of his career. But that doesn't diminish the fact that you still need to perform if you really want to get people's attention. Right? You can win fights, but you're never going to win their love if you're just winning fights that nobody's intrigued by. Right? For Inoue goes in there, and regardless of who he's fighting, he's destroying a motherfucker. He's entertaining people. People are now being critical of him because he got dropped in 2 fights most recently. But getting dropped and getting up and winning, that's something to praise a fighter for. Right? We've seen fighters in the past do the exact same thing and literally reap the benefit of the rewards. But of course, when it comes to Inoue, people would rather try to diminish and downplay him, right? When Tito Trinidad was getting knocked down all the time and getting up and destroying people, people were praising Trinidad as one of the best fighters in boxing, a pound-for-pound great, and a future superstar, right? Cotto had similar issues, and many other fighters have as well. But the point is, when you continue to get up and then win, that's something to revel over. Like, I didn't hate on Bam Rodriguez when Juan Francisco Estrada dropped him. No, because he got up and then went on to stop Estrada in a sensational performance, showing toughness, grit, determination. Right? The same thing I praised Deontay Wilder for in his 3rd fight against Tyson Fury. He lost the fight, he got stopped, and it was almost a complete replay of the 2nd fight. But once again, he showed a ton of fucking heart. And he showed you exactly what he was saying when he got pissed off about the corner stopping the fight. That he didn't want nobody stopping the fights. He wanted to go out on his shield. And that's exactly what he did in the 3rd fight. He showed a shitload of heart, went out like a warrior on his shield, right? So you can appreciate and respect a man for having that fighting heart. And that's what Inoue's shown you. Even when he's come through tough times, he's found a way to win. That's the heart of a real champion, right? Real champions find a way to win, even when things aren't necessarily going their way. This is not the kind of thing you need to diminish and downplay him, right? And the irony is, when we talk about, say, Stephen Fulton as an opponent, Stephen Fulton is a better opponent than anybody that Shakur Stevens has ever fought. And there's no denying that. Stephen Fulton is now in line to become a three-weight world champion. Imagine that he beats O'Shaquie Foster to become a 122-pound, 126-pound, and 130-pound world champion. I mean, that victory for Inoue is aging like fine wine, if that's what Fulton is able to do moving forward, right? Those are the kind of wins that prove your greatness. These are the kind of wins that are on your resume that historically are always looked at, right? When you look at Shakur's resume, the best win you could look at that on his would be Oscar Valdez. At 126 pounds, he won a vacant title. At 130, he beat Jamal Herring, and then he beat Oscar Valdez to unify titles. He moved up to 135, won a vacant title. So out of 4 titles he's won, he's beat 2 world champions and won 2 vacant titles. Inoue is a 4-weight world champion who's been undisputed in 2 weight divisions, right? And one of the guys he beat in a 2nd weight division is one of the fighters in boxing that has the most title defenses in boxing history, in Navarez, right? A guy that made a shitload of title defenses. I think it was 22 in his career, right? People want to praise Deontay Wilder for making 10 heavyweight title defenses. Navarez has like 22, maybe 24. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's a huge amount of title defenses that fighter made. That's who Inoue jumped up 2 weight divisions to fight. Jumped up 2 weight divisions, right? People are critical of people jumping up 2 weight divisions. He jumped up 2 weight divisions, took on the dominant fighter in the division, whose only loss had come when he moved up in weight to take on Donaire and got beat, and then moved back down to his division to dominate some more, right? But unfortunately, a lot of these people prove how casual they are. The fact that they just don't know shit about boxing. See, it's easy to diminish fighters that you don't know anything about because you just don't really follow boxing that hard. You'd rather dick ride a few fighters that come from the same country or same area as you. And that's fine. That's your prerogative. But then it doesn't really put you in a position to really comment on boxing as a whole when you don't really know fuck all about boxing as a whole. When you've already proven that you really only want to focus on a small selection of the boxing universe, right? And as I say, I'm not using this to diminish or downplay Shakur. I think Shakur is a great fighter, and future will tell how great he truly can be. What I don't appreciate is a guy in his position somehow trying to diminish Inoue to build himself up, because that's not going to raise him up on the pound for pound list, right? Trying to diminish Inoue is not helping Shakur move up the pound for pound list. What's going to help Shakur move up the pound for pound list is going in there and looking spectacular against Zepeda, going in there and unifying titles against Tank Davis, going up to his 4th weight division to become a world champion in that division, right? Doing these kind of things are what's going to build his legacy and put him in the conversation for one of the best pound for pound fighters in boxing, not by trying to diminish other fighters, especially guys like Inoue, who literally could care less about Shakur Stevenson, because right now he's riding fucking high. The dude's the 2nd biggest athlete in Japanese sports. He's got the biggest fight in Japanese boxing history happening early 2026. I mean, if Shakur was to get a Tank Davis fight, we could put him in a similar position. But the question is he going to be able to get that fight? Inoue is getting the Junto Nakatani fight. Is Shakur going to get the Tank Davis fight? Let's hope so. I hope he does, right? I'm not trying to hate on him and downplay him, but that's exactly what he's doing to Inoue. And the problem with him putting out that kind of narrative, he knows how a lot of Black American boxing fans feel about non-Black athletes as a whole. not just boxers. And he knows people will use this to continue to push out the narratives they do with regards to Inoue already. People talk about him being afraid to fight in America, using illegal raps, being on PEDs, fighting weak competition, even though, unlike Shakur, Inoue's fought, 12, 13 world champions, maybe more. Shakur's fought 1, 2, 3 world champions, maybe 4 off the top of my head. So, it makes no sense at all. But let me know in the comment section below what you think, because the truth is, all Shakur had to do was talk about his upcoming fight against Zepeda, talk about how he wanted to unify with Tank Davis when he was successful, and talking about how beating a Tank Davis would make him one of the pound for pound best fighters in boxing today. All those things I just said there are all true. They're all factual. You say those kind of things, you're building up future fights, big fights in America. You're saying things that are true and legitimate that boxing fans can agree with you. But trying to diminish and downplay another fighter, somebody that right now currently is ranked higher than you, and oh, he should be criticized because of his weak competition. Well, he's going to fight ex-unified champion MJ Akhmedov in September. That's going to be his 3rd fight of the year. Then he's going to fight apparently somebody in Saudi Arabia in December, right? Which would mean he'd have 4 fights this year. Maybe if you were fighting 4 times a year, people would be a little more stoked and excited about your career and what you would be doing right now, as opposed to having hand injuries, being injured, and not doing what Inoue's doing, and not scoring sensational victories, not walking through guys with dynamic knockouts, right? Not being one of the most explosive fighters in boxing today. Because if you were doing that, God knows you'd be getting a fucking shitload of hype in the US market. The fact that being a black American fighter, you're not getting that kind of push is because you don't even resonate that much with your own people. They'd rather support Devin Haney or Tank Davis instead of you. And maybe that's your connection to Bud Crawford, because we know all these fighters that were affiliated with Bud Crawford and Top Rank, for some reason, just don't really get the push from the black community like some other fighters do. Unfortunately, because I mean, if you want to support black fighters, you should support black fighters, especially from ESPN Top Rank, who literally are producing the best young up-and-coming fighters in American boxing. Not only do you have Keyshawn Davis, who looks great. I mean, I know he just shot himself in the foot recently, but that doesn't diminish how good he is and how we expect him to continue to become a superstar in the sport. Or, obviously, the fighter who's now taking over for him at the lightweight division in Abdullah Mason, who looks like potentially he might be the future of American boxing, and many others that are on the rise as well. Bruce Carrington and lots of others. So Top Rank is killing it when you talk about up-and-coming black American boxers, right? Shakur got everywhere he got thanks to Top Rank. He chose to move in another direction, and that's his prerogative. As an adult, he can go and fight wherever he wants. For me, I don't really care where he chooses to fight. I just hope it's somewhere that's going to give him the fights that boxing fans prefer and want to see him in. I just don't understand this whole Inoue bashing. But let me know in the comment section below. What do you think? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.